Hello, and thank you for joining us today on Thriving in the Age of Disruption. I'm glad you're here for this special conversation where Dr. Ramesh catches up with her mentor and first coach from decades ago when she was still just a tertiary student. Meet Dr. Jessica Leong, founder director, CEO, and clinical and academic director of the Executive Counselling and Training Academy, ECTA. This academy is a realization of a lifelong dream for Dr. Leong, who has always believed in the benefits of counseling and how counseling can help an individual find hope and the courage to grow and blossom. Dr. Leong has a PhD in psychology and is an accredited registered counselor, psychotherapist, and a certified clinical teaching and supervising transactional analyst. Dr. Leong has won the Gold Award in the Excellence in Teaching Convention organized by an Institute of Higher Learning, and has also achieved the distinction of becoming the first certified transactional analyst in Singapore. In addition, Dr. Leong was president of the Transactional Analysis Association in Singapore for over 20 years. She continues to lecture at universities and is a prolific author, corporate trainer, and conference and event speaker, sharing her expertise in the transactional analysis domain generously.
Jessica, you're someone who's very special in my life. I met you when I was 17 and a student at the Singapore Polytechnic. In fact, I think you were my first coach and mentor, and you made such a big impact in my life. You know, coaches and mentors can have very powerful influence over the choices that we make and how we grow. What would be your advice when choosing a mentor? Because I think it's useful for us to have mentors. Jessica?
It's important to choose a mentor that's not competitive with you. Because if your mentor is very competitive, you have a lot of power politics. So I think the first one is to choose one whereby the mentor is not competitive. The word mentor is that you go to that person to help you, to encourage you. Mentors must always remember the acronym of mentor, to help the mentee to manage, to encourage, and then to nurture their talents, their development, and to nurture the whole being. MEN and T is to teach them organizational responsibilities, that when you take up any role, there must be organizational responsibilities. So for the mentee, do not select someone who's insecure, who's competitive. And also as a mentor, we must always remember your mentee's success is your success.
That's so true.
When I first saw you, there was that part of me that was very intuitive. I knew that one day you're going to make it and you're going to make a difference. I didn't expect it to come so soon. So I was indeed very proud to be part of your development and to be able to witness your success as a woman and as an entrepreneur. So I would say that this is one of my own success stories that I like to share.
Thank you, Jess. And thank you for being there when it made the most difference to me. You've been someone who has an entrepreneurial mindset because you're resourceful, you look at a problem, you're looking at how to solve it, to create value and to manage the risk. And so my question for you would be, what was the turning point? What had you go out there and start your own business because you were comfortable without having to do that and take on that as an added responsibility?
I see myself as a late developer. If I could turn the clock around, I would want to develop the personal leadership within me much earlier so that I could have a longer runway to do many things that I would like to do and believe that I'm competent and I have the passion. I think that if you want to start any entrepreneur kind of journey, we have to, on our own initiative, scan for opportunities. Because sometimes when the opportunity is within our radar, but we miss it. And how many of us had missed opportunities in life? If there's one thing that people can take away today, is never be a victim, miss opportunity.
You also mentioned that you might have wanted to start on the journey of
developing your personal leadership. What aspect of personal leadership were you referring to?
I came from a very complex childhood because my mother was a second wife. I think that many of the regular experiences of a simple family I never had. And so growing up, I think that I learned to have low self-esteem, thinking that I'm not good enough. Probably it took away about 20 to 25 years of possibilities. And it was because of my mindset and the paradigm that I had that I was not good enough. I was very fortunate when I was in the tertiary institution. The CEO identified that even though I was married and had 2 little children, he believed that academically I could be developed, and I was given a kind of scholarship that provided salary, a university for me to develop myself. So as I was pursuing my Masters of Counselling in England, I actually grew up a lot because I found that I believe in myself, that I'm able to achieve the dream of my life because I had the passion for counseling. And here you are in this tertiary institution and being away from home, it paved the opportunity for me to develop my personal leadership and also to expand on my passion to contribute to the community, to contribute to those less fortunate than myself. Counseling is perhaps a profession that gelled most with me because I then stopped having self-pity and looking at myself that I'm not good enough. I then realized that success for any leadership or entrepreneurship is gratitude. Gratitude is very important. Very grateful to the opportunities that were given to me. And when I started to have gratitude, I found that I had better mental health and I don't go into a position of victim or being disadvantaged. Maybe 14 months in the United Kingdom, it was only in my 30s that I grew up. And as I flew home, I felt empowered. And I'm always grateful to the CEO of this tertiary institution. He allowed me to actually start a course in counseling in a Singapore context. At that time, it was only a counseling and care center that offered counseling courses. He actually gave me the platform, the moral support, the academic support, and also the financial reassurance. And I was able to successfully set up a counseling course. I became so excited and became a dreamer. I thought, what if I can start a course on my own and be a boss, which I've never been. And so that was how I started the Executive Counseling and Training Academy. Today, it is a very established leader in counseling. I'm grateful to opportunities.
Thank you for taking us through that journey. And would you mind sharing who this CEO of the Tertiary Institute was?
He was my CEO, Dr. Vara Prasad, who was then the CEO of Temasek Polytechnic. And he was an unconditional acceptance. He believed in dedication, hard work, honesty, and also passion. And he never demanded anything else. And that was very, very comforting coming from a person that I do admire. I saw a lot of leadership qualities in him.
Wow, this is a very rich, the content that you have just shared with us, because you've taken us through your own personal struggle with regards to leadership vis-a-vis as low self-esteem, and how you had the first opportunity to create a new perspective about yourself through that Masters in Counseling program. But even how you obtained that support to do the Masters was part of that breakthrough. And how when you returned, you had for yourself a fresh perspective about yourself and your ability. The second opportunity you shared was how in the course of your work, the opportunity to start something new, which for most of us who work for organizations, That's actually the closest to entrepreneurship, which is to try and start something new. And you jumped in and you took that on, and that became then the opportunity to dream. What if, right? I went out there and started something new. A very important piece that you've highlighted today, and that is gratitude, and how gratitude actually can impact all of us in shaping how we look at life. Also, I heard your gratitude for your corporate CEO sponsor who had faith in you, and over time you were able to create a new you. So Jess, what you do now in running your organization, because you have 20 people who work for you.
I have 19 people who work full-time in my academy. This will also be another good input for people who are wanting to start their business. I strongly believe that you must look for personalities that actually can gel with you, because the formation and the combination of talents, personality, competencies, and also good gender representation and a wide scope of different competencies that they are coming in is very important for success in a business. Sometimes you can put in commendable effort, put in a lot of your own savings, but if the partnership breaks down, then you would have to crawl all over again. So I thought that for anyone who wants to start any business and believing in partnership, which is a great thing, might want to consider personality compatibility, the different competencies that each person can contribute to the board. They must have two things: common goal and also motivation. Each person must not depend on the other person to motivate him or her, but the individual who is part of that entrepreneurship must marshal in your own zeal, your own enthusiasm, and your own motivation. So I believe that success in any kind of business strongly depends on this. First pillar is personality. Second pillar is they are all competent and high functioning. And then the third one is that they must be able to marshal in their own motivations.
I like what you said about how if you are going to form a business with a few people, that you want to look at the composition of the personality, the competency that each person brings to the table, and whether they are high functioning in that area, as well as the last piece, which is that each one of them is self-motivated, because then you have a dynamic team which is ready to take on the challenges of running the business together. Jessica, could you share a challenge that you faced either in your personal life or in your business, and how you were able to get out of that crisis? Crisis is something that people are talking about since COVID times. And so we want to be able to decode this with you.
So I like to talk about personal crisis followed by corporate crisis. My own personal crisis happened about 15 years ago when I was diagnosed with cancer. The diagnosis in itself could incapacitate you because of fear, because you can catastrophize the diagnosis you have and then begin to withdraw from all that you achieve. After the acute phase, I too went into the same fear like many people who had cancer. But I find that within a short time, I was able to build up my confidence again and trust in myself again, and then believe that I still have the ability to contribute. And also the ability to relabel the crisis and not call it a crisis, but to call it a small setback. Because if you call it a crisis, it means that you're going to lose your balance and then there's a disequilibrium. And that word crisis can be quite haunting, right? You can call it a small setback and also look at it as an opportunity for looking after your physical health, being more mindful, looking at aspects of life perhaps you have neglected. So it is almost like I see it as a second opportunity to look after your physical self, your spiritual self, your emotional self, and your social self. So that is one crisis that I emerged with a lot of pride that I was able to move on. It never stopped me from actually doing what I want to do.
Really, what you have highlighted here for us, number one, is to relabel a crisis into a small setback so that we can be empowered with how it shows up eventually. Number two is to also look on at the setback as an opportunity to look at things that we may have forgotten or neglected or not considered in the past, and to actually make that part and parcel of our life. What about the second challenge that you had in your life that you were going to highlight?
COVID-19, I see it as a universal storm. And what makes a difference between you and the other person is your mental resilience, whether or not you're able to still be optimistic, whether you're still able to see that the glass is not half empty, but it's half full. Whenever there is a crisis like that is not within your locus of control, tap on your resources. Internal resource is your social, emotional, and mental resilience, but you also have to tap on your external resource, that you can rely on family members, that you can actually tap on friendship and also mentors, and don't be afraid to reach out. And the third thing is that to use this crisis to overcome the fear of integrating technology into your workplace. This is very important. That will make a difference. The fourth thing is that continue to see the rainbow, even though there's thunder and storm. In one sentence, it is called a universal storm, but we are in different boats. It also taught me humility, that in this storm, even when you're coping very well, is to have the humility to understand that another person might not be coping as well as you are coping. And therefore, not to use a yardstick of judgment that people should be able to thrive or to judge that they should be able to cope with it. The first word I used was gratitude. The second one is compassion. The crisis taught me compassion. I see a difference between just having empathy as opposed to having compassion. To me, compassion is not just feeling what you feel, seeing what you see, and hear what you hear, but wanting to do something to reach out to help the other person. COVID-19 has given us many lessons that it need not be negative, but it can also be positive because it can also bring about compassion. The only way to survive the universal storm is to have adjustment. In any big or small businesses, is to embrace the idea of adjustment. If you do not adjust, it will lead to mental health issues like anxiety and depression. Adjustment means the willingness to be versatile, to shift your pole, to look at options, alternative, and opportunities. So I think this global pandemic, none of us were trained. We did have some lessons around SARS, and therefore it is about learning on your feet.
Between compassion and empathy, I'd never spent enough time to note the difference. But what I took away from your definition was that compassion was one step more. Not only did I demonstrate the necessary empathetic response to someone's situation, but I actually took action consistent with reaching out to that person. And I think that's the key point, because empathy is maybe just the first level, but truly to have a collective kind of a community, we need compassion. What is the top issue that Singaporeans face or struggle with in life, and what would be your message to them?
If you ask me what is the number one problem, it is communication. and relationship.
Can you say a little bit more about that? Communication and relationship, that sounds very intriguing.
For example, when you work with customers or you work in a team or you work with your reporting officer, I think that if you can communicate in a healthy way, see, I think the biggest problem we have is sometimes unhealthy and ineffective communication that would lead to misunderstanding and that would also lead to rupture of the relationship. The universal problem would be communication, because if you do not communicate effectively, there will be pockets of hemorrhage in a relationship. And once relationship is impacted, trust is also taken away. So to me, it doesn't matter how people present, what problems they have. When you really probe deeper into it, many a times, whatever problem that they might present, it is somewhat connected to communication and relationship.
Very insightful. And what can someone who is in their 20s, who's just starting out, do to develop their communication skills?
It is very important for young people to actually look at the 3 living skills that is so essential, especially if they want to run their own business. I think is to begin to build up their communication competencies, because you can get better connection. You call that rapport. And once you have got communication competencies, there will be mutual respect leading to rapport and relationship. Because you see, Dr. Ramesh, every relationship has problem. When there is a problem, some people can go into 2 different routes. One would be to create fights, argument, bitterness. On the other hand, we can actually synergize and co-create. If we are communicating competently and there is respect, rapport, and relationship, we could actually work together collaboratively or synergistically, co-create solutions whenever there's a problem in the workplace or in the business.
Learn communication competencies, because with those competencies, you get better connection, rapport, and eventually these bloom into great relationships.
Yeah, and you can use the relationship to synergistically co-create solutions.
All right, great. So let's move into a new topic. We want to know, where are you in your spiritual journey?
Probably a lot of people will not agree with me. I see spirituality as the state of well-being. And I think in order to have well-being, I like to create a metaphor of the chair with 4 legs. I think firstly, spirituality and well-being, for it to come into our life, we have to look after our physical self. Example, having sufficient sleep and also resting sufficiently, eating wisely, drinking a lot of fluid, and also eating a lot of vegetable and grains and fresh fruits. So that's the physical. I also think that it's important to have the social leg. It is important to have family and also social network. We need friends. We need the family, and you must give time. The 3rd leg will be the intellectual leg. Example, going on courses, upgrading, upskill, and retraining, so that your brain continue to be stimulated. And then as you go into your graying years, if your brain is very much exercised and also very much stretched, the fear of Alzheimer's, the fear of all the diseases connecting to old age, it's not guaranteed that you won't have it, but at least you might reduce the probability. Last one is called the spiritual leg. To me, the spiritual leg is the ability to integrate with nature and to enjoy a rose for a rose, not in the commercial sense, to bask in the glory of the sun, to be able to read poems, books, and to be able to meditate, going to mindfulness exercises, relaxation exercises, listen to music, and also watch very inspirational, like Chicken Soup for the Soul, inspirational movies or videos. So that's my definition of spirituality.
Wow, you've added a lot more dimension to that word called spirituality by helping us to see that actually, if we looked at ourselves as a whole, a system, there is that physical, social, intellectual aspect of us. And all these three aspects also have to be in harmony with that spiritual aspect where we feel that oneness with the environment and the universe. Thank you for making it simple to understand and yet easy for me to focus my attention on what's important today. If, let's say, for instance, if I'm cranky and upsetting people because I didn't sleep well, how can I be on a spiritual path? How did you come to this classification of these four legs as part of one's well-being and therefore spirituality?
When I had cancer, it was an attack of my physical self. And I realized that when my physical health, I thought I lost it. It affected my mental health. It also affected my social being. I started to withdraw. Emotionally, you feel because you fall down, you can't bounce back again. So I think that I was able to go through that horrendous experience at that time is because I was able to define for myself the meaning of spirituality, that they are all interconnected and they are all interlaced. Like the example you use, if you do not sleep, it will affect your concentration and that will affect your mental health and you make more mistakes. And when you make more mistakes, you cannot fulfill your KPI. And that will lead to a lot of mental health issue, again, anxiety, depression, and so on. People who are able to get integrated with nature and learn breathing exercises, they are doing a lot to help themselves with spirituality.
Wonderful. What is a simple life for you? And how do you live that?
I think that by default, you and I live in a complex life. And the only way to manage a complex life is to simplify life. Because if you join in the complexities, it can give you a lot of anxiety and a lot of frustration and agitation. For example, even in a day-to-day decision, let's talk about being a boss or you are the CEO of an organization. We can begin to look at their roles and their responsibility and begin to simplify them. So it is our duty as we lead them to simplify their role so that we can take away the stressor that bring along with complexities. Once there are complexities, everything is intertwined and interlaced. But if you can simplify it, that is called, to me, healthy living.
Wonderful.
How I simplify my life is to, even in my time management, I don't make it complex. I don't make it complex by putting in many itinerary in a week that I have. I look at my week and I ask myself, do I have enough rest? If I think I'm overexerting myself, and I make sure that Sunday would be a day that I could recuperate and so on. That's what I mean by simplify it whenever you can, because that would take away a lot of the stressors.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Can you use 3 words to describe a state of thriving? What does thriving mean to you?
Thriving is the ability to stay balanced. So to thrive is number 1, balance. Number 2, do not amplify and catastrophize the events that come into our life. And the third thing would be forgiveness. The ability to forgive yourself for bad corporate decisions we made, bad personal decisions we made, and to forgive yourself that I'm not perfect. That generosity to say that I'm not perfect. Thriving is also when you're able to forgive yourself, maybe over time. I think we can thrive better if we can forgive others. We are able to let go for peace.
Great, Jessica. That's such a useful guide on how to thrive in life. We all experience the highs and lows, But the most important thing is to stay balanced and deliberate in how we live, work, and play. Thank you, Jessica, once again for sharing your personal experience and insights with our listeners today. It has been wonderful to catch up with you.
Thank you, Dr. Ramesh and Dr. Leong, for sharing the special relationship that you have with each other and your insights on the most important life skills and habits for thriving with our listeners. Dr. Leong is not only an expert counselor, psychotherapist, and trainer, she is also a successful entrepreneur. So if you're interested to learn more about how to nurture that entrepreneurial mindset, which can give us valuable life skills that will help us solve everyday problems, adapt to changes, manage risks, and create value in our work and our lives, do check out Dr. Ramesh's book, The Big Jump into Entrepreneurship 2.0. You'll find the Amazon link in the podcast description, so you can easily click through to get your copy. Next up, we have a very special guest, Mr. Muhammad Ismail Ghafoor, who rose from delivering newspapers as a boy to becoming the CEO of Singapore's largest listed real estate company, PropNex. Thank you for listening today. We look forward to having you join our next episode of Thriving in the Age of Disruption podcast.